Greetings to you and welcome to this episode of Grace Podcast. I'm Timothy Muse. I'll be your host as we spend this time together today. It's a joy to be with you. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for making this podcast a part of your journey. And I want to thank you for being on this journey, for being on this path, for doing this work. It's so awesome that you're here. I'm so pleased that you're here. I want to continue to lift you up and celebrate that you're here doing this work. So good for you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making this work, this process, part of your life. If this podcast is helpful, please share it out there. Put it out there on your social media feeds. I post on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. If you follow me or the life coaching on any one of those feeds, you're going to see these episodes pop up. Share them. Tag me in it. Love to see where you are. Love to see where you're listening. If you are one of the listening platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or Amazon Music, follow us. Give us a rating and review. Every positive rating and review tells the platform that people are listening, and you'll get a new notification when a new episode comes out. And if you want to reach out to me directly, GraceLifeCoaching.com is the website. I would love to hear from you. I really, truly would. GraceLifeCoaching.com is the website. That's how you can get a hold of me. We have been going through this process of looking at what spring can teach us about our growth, about what we can expect, about what we can do. And I want to continue on with that. I want to dig deeper into that process. Last episode, we talked about expectation, about training our minds to anticipate growth instead of bracing for disappointment. Really big mind shift. Today, I want to move from mindset to structure. Okay, I want to move to structure because expectation without preparation, without structure, creates frustration. So if your mindset is vision, then your habit is the soil. And growth will only be strong as the ground can support it. So we want to talk about habits today. Let's talk about the importance of habits and why habits matter, why habits are important, why habits are more important than motivation. You know, here's something that we don't want to hear. Motivation is unreliable, and it really truly is. Motivation fluctuates. It disappears. It gets tired. It fades under stress. When we depend on motivation, motivation is a subjective thing. It ebbs and flows. Habits, on the other hand, habits operate even when motivation is low. When we build good habits, we live into those habits even when our motivation is low, even when our motivation is lacking, because habits are automatic. They conserve energy. They reduce decision fatigue. And they create stability. I mean, think about it for a minute. We've all had those nights, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm really tired. I'm getting ready to go to bed. I'm falling asleep on the couch. I just want to go crawl in bed and go to sleep. But the habit kicks in that we get up and we brush our teeth. It's not a decision. It's like, should I brush my teeth or not tonight? Should I wash my face tonight? No, it's a habit. There's no decision in it. We don't have to fluctuate in that decision. And it creates stability. It's the trigger in our brain. I brush my teeth, I get in bed. That is the trigger. If you're preparing for a strong spring season in your life, whether it's a new goal or renewed energy or career shift or relationship growth or some kind of health improvement, you need habits that quietly support your progress. Spring growth doesn't happen because you feel ready. It happens because the soil is being prepared consistently. And that's where a habit comes in. Habits are important. So let's shift our perspective here. You know, most adults overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in 90 days. And that's so true. You know, if you look out over 90 days from now until 90 days from now, we will underestimate what we do in 90 days, but we'll overestimate what we can do in a week. Growth compounds, right? Growth compounds. Growth doesn't start anew. If you think about a flower or a plant, as it continues to grow, the stalk gets stronger and stronger from the bottom up. It compounds. Small actions repeated daily become structural changes. And that's where the hustle comes in. That's where the growth happens. 5 minutes of intentional movement per day becomes energy. 10 minutes of reflection becomes clarity. One boundary set becomes emotional freedom. One glass of water turns into hydration consistently. The key is not intensity. The key is repeatability. When you prepare soil, you don't dump fertilizer on it and hope for a miracle. You cultivate it consistently. And that's how habits work. And that's why habits are so important. If you want your next season to be strong, whatever this season is coming, whether it is a growth season, a pattern down season, if you want this season to be strong, then there's 3 areas of support that are important. 3 areas to build good habits. The first one are mental habits. These include things like morning intention setting or limited negative self-talk, practicing gratitude or journaling or reframing setbacks, reading growth-oriented material. These are mental habits. These protect your mindset, okay? These protect what's going on inside of your head. And we've talked about this before. I've mentioned all of these things before. I'm not giving you any new information per se, but I do want to reframe it and kind of put it into perspective of habit forming. We need good mental habits, because if we don't have good mental habits, we'll have bad mental habits. That's it. There are no neutral mental habits. There's an old Buddhist statement that, we have monkey brain. And I'm sure you can all attest to having some form of monkey brain where it feels like monkeys are running around in your brain. Well, here's the deal. We can't get rid of the monkeys. They're always there. The goal is to give the monkeys something to do. And that is a mental habit. When we give our brain something to focus on, something to do, when we build those habits, we can build a stronger mindset and a stronger vision. Without them, stress hijacks our focus. Fear hijacks our clarity. Laziness or lack of addressing our self-talk allows for just that negative spiraling, that negative thinking. So we want to build good mental habits that will strengthen our mindset, that will protect our mindset, so we don't just slip into some kind of negative mind or negative belief structure. The second one is physical habits. Of course, we're physical beings, right? We can't ever leave our physicality. Our physicality and our mentalness, they all go together. So we need physical habits, and these include things like movement, sleep consistency, hydration, nutrition awareness, stretching, breathing exercises. Your body is the foundation of your energy, not your brain, not motivation, not stress, but your body is the foundation of your energy. So if your nervous system is dysregulated, your goals feel heavier. Preparing the ground means supporting the body. It means giving good things to the body. It means getting that movement. It doesn't have to be a workout at the gym every day, but get up and move. Sleep consistently. We can do that. We're so exhausted all week, and then on the weekends, we sleep in. Well, that lack of consistency trains our brains in different ways. So we want to build that sleep consistency. And hydration. We as a culture are so super dehydrated. On average, an adult male should consume 120 ounces of fluid a day, and an adult female should consume 95 ounces of fluid a day. Now think about that. Think about how much fluid you consume. Now, yes, it can be in coffee or water. We do get some fluid from foods, but think about, are you getting close to that? That's a lot of fluid to consume in a day, but it's important because our brain, that organ inside of our head, is mostly fluid. And when we dehydrate, our brain shrinks. That's why when you deal with someone who's, chronically dehydrated, they don't think as well, or they don't have the cognitive capacity because their brain isn't functioning. Hydration is so important. Nutrition awareness, what we put into our bodies, what we eat, the micronutrients. 75% of our food chain is processed. Processed food takes out all those micronutrients. They create a nutrition imbalance. So being aware of our nutrition, stretching, moving, breathing, all these things are so important for our physical habits. And our relational habits. That's the third place I want to touch on, is our relational habits. These include things like checking in with important people and setting healthy boundaries, saying no when needed, communicating clearly, reducing reactive responses, and practicing listening. Look, spring growth rarely happens alone. The quality of your relationships affect the quality of your season. So when we build good relational habits, we build good relationships. Those are the three areas I think that really should get some focus in building new habits. Now, most people fail at habit change. And why is that? This is the elephant in the room, if you will. Most people struggle with habits because they aim for overhaul instead of alignment. They aim to make big habits, huge habits, instead of building small habits into alignment. They'll say things like, I'm going to start waking up at 5 a.m. or I'm going to work out an hour every day, or I'm going to completely change my diet, or I'll be perfectly disciplined. Now, those sound like great long-term goals, but when those are the starting point, usually within 2 weeks, they collapse. Not because people are incapable, my friends. No. And if this is where you're at, if you've tried this before and it hasn't happened, please don't hear it as you're incapable, because you're not. It's not incapability. It's because the habit was too big for the current season. You're not building a highlight reel here, my friends. You're not looking to overhaul something, overnight. That's not what we're looking for. You're building soil. So we focus on small, sustainable habits that support your real life, not an idealized version of it. And hear that again. We focus on small, sustainable habits that support your real life, not an idealized version of yourself. Now remember, that idealized version of yourself may be a year out. Maybe that's your ultimate goal. But that year, that's going to take a year to get there. So give yourself the ability and the love and the grace to get there. So use the 2 to 5 minute rule. 2 to 5 minute rule is really impressive when you start talking about building habits. If the habit takes less than 5 minutes, you are far more likely to repeat it. That's true. If the habit takes less than 5 minutes, you are far more likely to repeat it. Want to build journaling consistently? You want to journal consistently? Start with 3 sentences. Just open up your journal, write down 3 sentences. You want to improve your fitness? Start with 5 minutes of movement. Maybe that's a walk around the office building or getting up and stretching at your desk. You want to regulate stress? Practice 1 minute of breathing. 1 minute of breathing. You want to build discipline in reading? Read 1 page. Open a book and read 1 page. That's how you do it. The size of the habit matters less than the repetition. Repetition builds identity. Identity builds momentum. And momentum builds growth. So you don't want to get motivation. You want to get momentum. Remember, I've said before about a train. A train doesn't just take off out of the gate. It doesn't just shoot out. It's not a roller coaster. It takes a long time to start building up that momentum. But once that momentum is built, it's very hard to stop it. And that's what we want to build. You want to build momentum over time. You're not looking to overhaul things in a week, and you're not looking to undo years or maybe decades of bad patterns or patterns that are destructive overnight. You're not going to do it. It's going to be too much, and it's going to be too heavy. So start small. The 2 to 5 minute rule. If you want to build a new habit, start with something that takes less than 5 minutes, and then build on that. Do that for a while. And then build on that. Because what happens is you build momentum. Okay, let's go to the reading. You want to start reading more. All right, you want to build a discipline of reading. You sit down, you read 1 page. And then tomorrow you sit down and read 1 page. And then the next day you sit down and read 1 page. But then you don't want to stop. So you read 2 pages. And then 2 becomes 3. And then 3 becomes 4. And then 4 becomes 8. It builds up over time. You're not looking at achieving a number of pages. You're looking at achieving repetition. You want to repeat because repetition builds identity. Identity builds momentum, and momentum builds growth. That's how you want it to work. One of the simple ways to bring this success in is habit stacking. Now, I've mentioned habit stacking before. James Cleary in his book, Atomic Habits, talks about this. Habit stacking, very powerful strategy here. Instead of adding something new randomly, add something new and attach it to something you're already doing. We already have a lot of habits that we do in a day. We make about 30,000 decisions in a day, and many of those decisions are made based on habit. Do you decide to brush your teeth? Yes, you do, but you do it automatically because it is habit. Do you decide to put your pants on one leg at a time? Yes, you do, but you have a habit of it. You've built that. You've done it over and over. So use those habits. After I brush my teeth, I'll say one intention for the day. Or while I'm brushing my teeth, I'll have an affirmation mantra hanging on the mirror. After I pour my cup of coffee, I'll take 3 deep breaths. I'll pour my cup of coffee. We do that every day. And then I'll just stop and take 3 deep breaths. Add to that habit. After I get home from work, I'll stretch for 2 minutes. Or while I'm reading my emails, I'll stretch. Okay? After I check my emails, I'll stand up and move for 60 seconds. Or maybe I'll check my emails standing up. They make standing desks and elevated laptop or computer opportunities. So while I'm checking my email, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to move. You're already doing something, so add something to it. Stacking habits removes friction. Friction is what kills consistency. Make your spring preparation easy. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be heroic. Make it easy. When you build an easy habit, then those habits build easier and they get momentum stronger, because that's what we want to do. We're changing things. And as we change things, it's important to understand that sometimes building habits means removing things. Sometimes it's a habit of removing things. There are some things that are blockers to building new habits. And so it's important to do a little deep dive into asking yourself, what habit am I currently working on that goes against me? Not all habits are good, my friends. Not all habits are good. And sometimes building new habits means breaking old ones. Things like doom scrolling. We all love to doom scroll, right? We just sit down and we open up our phone and we just scroll and we scroll and we scroll and we see how everybody else's life is better and mine is terrible and I feel so bad, right? Staying up too late. Oh, it's just one more episode. Oh, it's just 5 more minutes. Oh, it's just 10 more minutes. Overcommitting. Something we all do, right? Yeah, saying yes when you mean no. Overcommitting. Negative self-talk. We talked about that before. When something goes wrong, we just tear at ourselves. And it takes us so much longer to not only fix what's going wrong, but also get out of that negative self-talk. Emotional eating. Yeah. A lot of people cope with their emotional reality by eating and avoiding difficult conversations. Sometimes we just bury those conversations inside. So avoiding difficult conversations. Before you add a new habit, consider subtracting one that drains you. What are some of the habits you're already doing that are draining you, that are taking away your energy? Clearing the soil is just as important as fertilizing it, pulling the rocks out. And those bad habits can be rocks. What you remove may be more powerful than what you add. And that's really a true thing. That's really a true thing. What you remove may be more important than what you add. So, and in this, you start to build stability. That's the whole point of building habits. Habits are stable. You want stable habits. Stability precedes acceleration. So as you're moving, as you're removing and replacing, you want to build habits that are stable, small, incremental growth over time. You don't want to build chaotic things or things that come and go. A good habit is going to be grounding. And in that grounding, that's where you grow. You grow out of that grounding. Habits are the things that reserve our energy. They help to build capacity. They take away those decision-making realities. So build them. Build them. I would encourage you this week to really look at building some spring habits. Choose one mental, one physical, one relational habit, and, work on one. Each week, under 5 minutes, work on one. Commit to practicing them daily. That's it. No overhaul, no dramatic reinvention, just steady preparation. And then evaluate. So that's what I got for you today, my friends. Habits are quiet, they don't impress at first, but they change everything. Build those good habits, and you'll be able to move forward with slow, steady, important growth. If this podcast is helpful, please share it out there. Put it out there on your social media feeds. Put it out there on your listening platforms. If you want to reach out to me directly, GRACELifeCoaching.com is the website. I'd love to hear from you. Here at Grace Life Coaching, we want you to be the best you.